How do we unlearn self-sacrifice as people who care very deeply? In these times, right, reclaiming our energy and getting free. That is the topic of tonight's discussion. So, welcome if you are new here. My name is Marissa Price. I am a social worker, healing practitioner, digital business strategist, and my channel is dedicated to providing information and resources for Black women and femmes getting free. And I have a lovely guest with me here today, Megan Torres. I will pass it over to her to introduce herself and tell us about her new book, Surviving Kindle Revolution.
So I am Megan Torres. I am a licensed clinical social worker from Ohio. I am living full-time in Mexico, Merida, Mexico, and I'm a therapist. I'm a writer, and I'm a truth teller and a disruptor, not on purpose, but sometimes that doesn't matter. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I was telling Megan I've been following her work for years now on Instagram, reading all of your posts, being in graduate school in social work, right? Just all of these issues felt like they were compounding. Um, and me being in that moment trying to like save the world, which led me into a lot of different circumstances, right, as a grad student in social work. And so, yeah, it feels like full circle to be here and to have Megan on my channel. So, yes, excited. I do want to ask just anything you want to share around what inspired you to write this book, which is so needed at this time, Survival and
Oh,
Devolution.
yes. So if people don't know, that is a nod to the Black Panther Party. Survival Pending Revolution was their concept of mutual aid, which we have absolutely intellectualized and did so much with. Like, we're doing the most. It was take care of yourself, right? Water yourself so that you can water other people. That's it. Like, look, like that's it. That's it, but that's not it, right? I wrote Survival Pending Revolution. It's been a long time coming. Perfectionistic tendencies for sure. I was very worried. I was in people pleaser mode. I was very worried, given the times, that people would think that it was an excuse to not do more. Um, and so I grapple with that too, even though I talk about it in the book.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that people in the helping professions, we do that. We're not allowed to have a bad day. I worked inpatient psych,
Sure.
baby. Um, I know about a bad day for other people. There were parents that I met with who lost their children through suicide, right? Who were on my schedule and then taken off, but I would still have to meet with the parents. And then to come home and I don't know, maybe the house was a mess or
Yeah.
my kiddo did something frustrating, like suppressing that and stuffing it down because in comparison to, right, the worst of the worst that you
Mm.
see, um, it wasn't that bad. And it has taken years and is taking, because it's a continual practice, not to minimize um, based off of what has gone on at work, based off of what is going on in the rest of the world, right? So if you're not a social worker and you're here, I'm talking to you too. It's not just us. It is not
Yeah.
just us. It is highly sensitive people, folks who give a damn, right? Everybody that follows me, I tell you all the time, like we give a damn, right? And that's not a bad thing. And and
Mm-hmm.
um, I know codependency is like a funky word, and it's, to be clear, it's not a diagnosis for folks who don't know. I look at it as you can't hold space for someone without being sure that they're okay. Right. So if someone else isn't okay, then you're not okay. That's the simplest definition I can kind of come up with on the top of my head around codependency. And that's not a way to live your life. That's not a way to have an activism that is sustainable, because you will absolutely burn out. You will become resentful. You will quit. And you will not be affected. I kind of read you a little bit in the book because, like, why are you tired? You're not doing, you're not effective, right? So, like, ruminating on what other people are not doing is not is not activism.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
Being in the same role right? So activism can look like, going to protests, right? It's okay if you're not at a protest every single time. Different stages of your life require a different type of activism for you. And unfortunately, a lot of this got whitewashed. Yes, whitewashed because
Mhm.
there's so many elements of perfectionism um, that are ingrained into it. And really, it's just about community. It's really about community. Um, and sitting with yourself and thinking, what do I have to offer, right? If I'm being asked something, I don't immediately have to say yes. I can take that pause, we call it like a therapy sacred pause, right? For the people
Mhm.
pleasers, take a pause. It's okay. You're even allowed to say no, but most likely what you're going to end up doing is something in between.
Mm. That's
um,
powerful. Yeah.
an example, can I give an example? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more off
Please.
ADHD. But an example is that during the whole Charlie Kirk commotion out here in Mexico, we have our own news cycle, and there was a horrific pipe explosion in Iztapalapa, which is a neighborhood in Ciudad de Mexico, Mexico City.
Mm.
And I was in Mexico City at the time last week. It happened last week. I was in Mexico City at the time. And the way folks organize so easily, right? Because they were already in community with each other. So I'm getting chills when I talk about it. So there's a Black in Mexico City WhatsApp group, and I'm in it. And someone wrote that they were looking for donations. So here in Mexico, it's not like the United States, and family members are not always allowed, usually not allowed inside the hospitals. So they wait outside all day waiting for news about their loved ones. Folks don't have a backup plan in terms of, oh, I got to take off work to go see, how my husband is, who was in the pipe explosion. They don't have any extra money or savings to lean on. So stopping at the store or going out to eat is like to bring food to be with them while they wait to hear news about their loved ones. It's not a thing. That's a convenience that most people globally don't have. And so there one of the Black expats, foreigners, because I know that's a contentious term. Black foreigners have written in the group, we're doing a fundraiser, we're raising money, but we also just need food so that we can make sandwiches to go hand out to folks standing in line. Now, mind you, this is the important
Mhm.
part that I want you to listen to and hear is that that wasn't her idea, right? This is not some American savior coming in. Her friend said, this is what we need. And she said that. And then
Mhm.
she made the announcement. So there were locals working together with Black foreigners. And I keep saying Black because it was Black folks. It was Black folks,
Mhm.
Black foreigners. And on that day, it was my friend's birthday, and I was going to her. She was having like a little spa get together at a hotel. So we are going to be in the jacuzzi, chill out, go swimming. And I donated 100 US, and then I went on my page and folks donated, like matched that 100. So I was able to do 200 US dollars worth of supplies for sandwiches and things like that. They asked me to stay to help make sandwiches. I said, no, I can't do that, but I can drop it off. And that's an example of a boundary and what it looks like to not over sacrifice, to not people please, to not go into savior mode, right?
Mhm.
Wanting to get in there and like organize and be like, well, what about this? What about that? Trusting that the person, right, um, knows what they're doing because they live here, because they do.
Yes. Mhm.
And just that other people are going to show up, and they did. I couldn't stay. 50 other people could, right? And the people that could stay but not go to the physical hospital to hand the sandwiches out, another 50 people came, right? So I liken it to a relay race in the ebook of
Yes.
trusting that
Mhm.
people are going to have their job, going to do their job, trusting that people are going to already show up. And it was, no, I say this because I was on the outside looking in. I don't know what it is on the inside, but it seemed the vibes were that it was easy peasy because these folks are already in community, right? They're already in
Mhm.
community, and I think we have lost that a little bit as folks, Black folks and people of color in the United States living under white supremacy, that we forget that we already know mutual aid, that we already know community, that we already know how to organize, that we already know these things. It's not something to learn in a book. It's not something to like I think that we've intellectualized it too much. And it's not a judgment, maybe a little bit, not a judgment because we are like, our situation is very unique in that we have been minoritized in the United States. Um, but it was just a beautiful thing to see. And I think the biggest piece is that there wasn't guilt attached to it. There was no guilt
Mm.
attached to I can't stay.
Yeah.
And I wasn't made to feel guilty. She gave me a hug. She was a local woman, local Mexican woman. She gave me a hug. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you so much. This matters. And then on to the next. It's okay. And then I went to my little spa day party.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't have to do everything. We don't. It's honestly
Yeah.
it's a little egocentric to think that we do. So when your activism, when your activism becomes about how does this make me look, that's when it's been time to like kind of step back and be like, okay. And it's not even just your activism, right? If you work in a hospital, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're a social worker, right? In this position, we're lauded for how much we give up, right? If you're at a cocktail party, people are like, tell people what you do if you don't lie about it. I know I have sometimes, but I can never do that, right? And that kind of feeds our ego
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. And sometimes we internalize that, like, no, we're not
It's
saviors. We
true.
do what we can do when we can do it. We trust ourselves and we trust each other. And we don't trust each other in that the other person's going to show up perfect or even at all. What else are you going to do? We can't,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it boils down to. I tell folks all the time, if you want to stay engaged in activism, if you want to stay engaged in general, you cannot control what other people are doing. And no one likes, I don't like that. I don't like, I don't like when I don't have
Mm-hmm.
control. But we never do. We have to let it
Yeah.
go and surrender um, to show
Surrender.
up for
Ooh. Yeah.
ourselves. Mm-hmm. In preaching.
Mhm. I want to ask you about the feelings of guilt that you mentioned, because whew, that is so real, which prevents a lot of us from establishing boundaries. If we say that we can't do this, right, those feelings of guilt sometimes can be very strong. Was there a process that you went through to release those feelings and just be like, no, I have to preserve myself for the long term?
Yes, and that's when I think I'm going to change it from guilt to shame, because I think that's what we're talking
Mm,
about actually. Guilt is an action.
mm,
Um, Guilt is a feeling that is tied to an action that you did. Shame is um, a feeling, but it is rooted in who you are, right? It's much more
mm,
complex. Guilt is like, I don't know if I accidentally, if I'm playing frisbee, I accidentally hit somebody in the face with frisbee, right? I feel guilty that I did that. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It was an accident.
mhm,
Shame is when I never play frisbee again, or I'm anxious about playing frisbee again because I might hit somebody in the face, and that just means I'm an awful,
mm,
terrible person who does that, right? And you're ruminating on how horrible of a human you are, which is again self-centered, not in a judgmental way, but in a you're thinking of self versus from the outside. And so the ebook talks about that. I think around getting our shame together, confronting it with self compassion, which I have no idea how or why, but people have conflated that with with nuance and rest and self-compassion with not doing anything. And to be fair, the message is really for people that have been doing the work, not people who just like got to the table and they're like surprised, like, oh my God, I can't believe the United States is like this. Where have you been? Right? Like welcome, but like also
yeah.
where have you been? We have to confront our shame to do any kind of effective work. We have to confront our shame to be in any, forget work, like to be in community with people. You have to confront your shame. And I write about it as well. I talk about it a little bit, the way that you show up in terms of like conflict resolution is usually tied to your activist style, right? Are you someone that kind of just takes on, you know, like, are you a martyr? Are you someone who avoids conflict at all costs until, rage builds up, and then you go off and you don't talk to, the folks you were organizing with for a year, right? It's not your activism and how you show up in the world is not something separate than how you show up in any other relationship.
That's so true. And I'm looking at the activist profiles that you laid out in your book, right? The peacemaker, the black sheep, the overfunctioning martyr, the golden child. Anything that you want to share around these profiles that you identified?
Yeah, I was just sitting one day and I was like, I like this. So my brain works in categories. And so I want people to be able to see themselves in each of those categories. Not necessarily each of them, but you might see yourself in more than one. And it's kind of how we do family work too, not to therapize everyone, but how did you show up as a child? What happened when there was conflict? What happened, when your parent came home? It was like this wasn't done. What were you doing all day? Right? That induces, those memories and those feelings in our bodies of shame, not guilt, but shame, because right, so and so worked all day. And then I couldn't even take the chicken out to thaw, right? Everybody knows as an adult now why that was a thing, but also like you weren't a terrible child for having ADHD and forgetting.
Right.
So that's why I created those different concepts so that people could see themselves, and then also questions for consideration. They are just for consideration, right? If you identify in one or more of those categories.
Understood. You mentioned vicarious trauma in the book, and I want to talk about that, especially now, right? The level of trauma that we experience when someone else experiences trauma. Can you talk a little bit more about that, the effects of vicarious trauma, particularly for activists?
Yes. So you can't outrun your nervous system response. Wish I had come up with that, but I did not. I referenced the Headington Institute because they do great work with people who are in the field, workers who are in the field, not just social workers, but field workers. So folks handing out or helping to hand out grain, right, in Gaza, or folks in war torn areas. Where if you don't show up for your job, people will actually die, and they are still allowed boundaries. So I kind of use them as like the extreme example of like, hey, these are folks who, if they don't show up at 100, like people are gonna die. Like people are going to not be okay, and still people are not okay. Like you can't hold that, right? Because you're not perfect. But in terms of vicarious trauma, it's really interesting because I'm going down this rabbit hole. I'm going to write about it on Substack. But now this is generalization because I don't have the statistics in front of me. But a lot of folks who are drawn to social work, particularly child welfare, have very high ACE scores, lots of history of childhood trauma. So whenever people are, why did you become a therapist? Why did you become a social worker? I say trauma, and I'm joking, but I'm not joking, right? Like a lot of us are drawn to the field because we subconsciously or consciously want to give the support and see people in a way that a lot of us were not seen, particularly if you are a millennial, because mental health, I think when I was younger, it just wasn't really a thing. We didn't talk about vicarious trauma at all in grad school, and I graduated in 2011. I didn't have language for it. Hadn't even heard of it for a long time. And the way that it affects our nervous system is not something that you can change, right? I remember, you see people saying share on social media, or you need to be watching this, and no, you don't. You don't need to be watching
Right.
Children Be Unalive. That's not the work. And too often people are stuck in that. Like, if I feel horrific, right, it comes back to you censoring yourself. This is not effective. This is you censoring yourself. I am living a fairly, honestly, depending on your marginalizations, right, a fairly comfy life. And this mother just watched her 6-year-old and her 8-year-old be unalived or beheaded
Right.
or whatever, right? And then they think that that is the work, and they think that they can override their nervous system um, to continue doing that. That's just not sustainable. Um, it's just not sustainable. You have to, you don't have to do anything. It is helpful to choose a few lanes and stay in those lanes so that you can consistently check in on yourself around what can I do today? And it will be what can I do today? Um, because we also have our own stuff, right? We have our own lives. We have our divorces. We have our kiddos. We have our school stuff. We have our health diagnoses. We have, y'all have, right, living under that man in the United States, and listening to him talk in itself is traumatic. We have so much of that that we have to be really confident confident about
Mhm.
saying, checking in with myself is just as important as sharing this post about Gaza, or about Congo, or going down the deep dive into the history of what's going on in Congo, and beating yourself up around, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't know that there were two Congos.
Mhm.
Just throw that out there. Right. And just giving yourself some grace. You're in it. If you decided to do better, then you're in it. I don't think you have to call yourself an activist per se. I think honestly too many people are that aren't. But it's okay. It's okay to take a
Mhm.
pause. It's okay to take a beat.
Mhm. I want to talk about this theme that you weave like throughout the book, right? Self compassion, and just the importance as people who are activists and who are interested and who care very deeply, having self compassion, right, for yourself as you're ingesting this information and feeling so called to speak out about it. Anything that you want to share around the importance of that, having compassion for self?
Just that again, it sustains you. It sustains you as a human being. It is something that you need as a human being if you are witnessing the unwitnessable, if that's a word, the unwitnessable. A lot of us have history in anti-human trafficking work and child sexual abuse work, and I have heard and seen things I can't ever unsee or hear. Um, so yeah, if unfortunately in the field, especially social work, I don't know if it's like this with doctors too, but there's a lot of guilt. So I would have supervisors guilt me, especially my unpaid internship, guilt me into staying longer. They still owe me money. Staying longer, right?
Mhm.
And it's just it's gross, but it is the norm. Kind of like how in kitchens it's normal for chefs to like yell at you. Um, it's normal in the social work field to be like, if not you, then who? Right? A lot of
Mm.
our supervisors and bosses are white women,
Mhm. Yeah.
who don't even really, in my experience at least, didn't even really need to work to put food on the table because they were married to somebody rich. This was just like their
Mhm.
hobby. And so they didn't understand that, yes, my paycheck needs to come on time. Like, yes, my paycheck
Mhm.
needs to be deposited on time. No, I can't do this. I have to do something, for my son.
Mhm.
Um, and so just recognizing the manipulation. And I really do wish we talked about this in grad school. I hope that it's better
Yeah.
now, but the way that the culture is steeped in guilting people into pushing past their boundary that they stated, or pushing them past the boundary that they stated, or just trying to see how far they can push you to get additional labor. It's not okay, and
Yeah.
it is very toxic, and it's very frequent. I mean, you could see it on a systemic level because I noted that my internship was unpaid. Um, us having
Yes.
unpaid internships and putting our physical bodies in danger in a lot of cases for child welfare, even anti-trafficking. I don't talk about it too much, but like I've gotten texts from cartel. That's when I was like, yeah, no, wrap it up, wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
This is not worth it. And that was the final boundary, but it didn't have to be like that, right? I could have had a supervisor who wasn't like, make sure you friend the girls on Facebook so that we can make sure when they disappear with their pimp, like we can still track them. And me saying, no, I'm not doing that. And then her
Mm-hmm.
saying, well, I wonder if you really care about this job, right? So just clearly still upset about it, but
Oh,
just very
wow.
toxic ways in which people feel that they can push people that care into doing things that they don't want to do, um, and making people feel guilty for saying no. And that carries over again outside of social work into activism, into the care that you have decided to give. If you can't stay longer, you can't stay longer. And if you're in a relationship with people where that's not okay, or someone is guilting you into that, it's time to kind of not necessarily reassess, but just stand on business. And I said, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes far too long sometimes for us to realize that that's not mean, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just assertive.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. Can I ask you about that? Because that's something I've had to work through, that it's not mean to set
Mhm.
boundaries, right? It's actually preserving yourself and how you move through that.
I just feel it. I still feel bad sometimes. I do. I've tried to embrace the like, I don't care, baby. I do care. I'm sensitive. I am a triple water sign. I am a Cancer sun, Pisces rising, Pisces moon. Um, I care, but I care. I think the shift was that I care more about myself and how this is going to impact me than what it looks like, right? So that's the shift. It isn't that you won't feel bad anymore. The shift is I care for myself and I love myself more than I care about what this is going to look like,
Yeah.
disappointing somebody else. So unfortunately, and I tell my clients all the time, unfortunately, your therapy is not necessarily gonna like get better. You're gonna feel the feels, but you're going to make a different decision. Right. I
Mm.
wish it was, I mean, maybe for some people, I can only speak for myself and what I've seen, with clients. The more that you're assertive, the easier it is, but the easier is like how fast you get to your no without over explaining. It's not like the yuckiness in your tummy that bubbles up, because your body is recognizing that you haven't had a lot of opportunities to be safe to say no, right? That's not your fault. Your
Mhm.
body's like, oh, when has this ever worked out? Like dating, but we won't go there. Your body's like, this is not like the return on investment here has not been high, right? So it makes sense
Yeah.
that your body is like, oh, and you start ruminating. You're like, oh my God, I just gave $100. Man, I should have gave $200. I could have pulled from here and da da da. No, I didn't go through all that. Maybe like a few years ago, I would have gone through all that, but I don't go through that cycle of trying to convince myself to do something I don't want to do. So that's the one. I still feel, um, I would say I feel some guilt, but that shame is is
Mm.
is not as strong.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't equate
Thank you
it
for
to who I
sharing
am
that.
as a person. I equate it to, well, this is the situation. It's okay.
Mm. And I think for those of us who are just beginning to set boundaries, like feeling that we feel like our bodies are telling us, as you said, we feel like there's something wrong. And so then we like eliminate the boundary altogether. But
Right.
to recognize that's part of the process. As you said, your body's giving you information. You've been here before and it hasn't been safe. so I'm trying to protect you. I think even like recognizing that can be so powerful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And give yourself time if you're not ready to say, just practical skills, not ready to say no, the whole, give me a minute to think about it. Let me think about it. And that helps bring that urgency down, because usually when someone is asking us something related to giving or service, it is time sensitive, right? Those families, like I was contacted, or I'd heard about it in the morning. They needed to eat by noon, so it wasn't like I had time to do all of this. But I took a breath and I said, looked at my schedule. What do I have to do today? Right? Going to the spa versus making sandwiches for folks impacted by a pipeline explosion, right? I don't do that comparison of like, well, which one? Because obviously, right? But also it's nuanced. Um, I don't do that comparison anymore in terms of who has it worse, what's going to happen if I don't. I just do what I can, and I know that's enough. So even if you don't feel like it's enough, you can know that it's enough. People that aren't doing enough aren't usually questioning if they're doing enough. They're not having these conversations. I know y'all
That's
having
so
the conversation,
true.
because I be having the conversation, but they're not going back and forth. They're just like, okay, this is it. This is it. Take it or leave it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
That is so true. And you mentioned something I want to touch on, overriding our nervous systems.
yeah.
Can you talk more about that? And I'm just thinking about social work, right? My
Mhm.
time in graduate school, it was actually like rewarded, as you mentioned, to push past your nervous system in order for like the greater good, right? That's always positioned like
Mhm.
that. Anything that you want to share around that, overriding our nervous systems?
That, what you said, but also that adrenaline, right? A
Hmm.
lot of us also are, correlation versus causation, but I think a lot of us in the field too have ADHD, and so that adrenaline, not knowing what's going to happen next. Emergency department, crisis, anti-trafficking, carrying two pagers, dating myself, but carrying two pagers, right? Just needing to be relied upon. Um, it gives you that adrenaline to help you get through it, but then you have that crash too. So when I talk about not being able to override your nervous system, that goes back to something I read on one of the Headington Institute's blogs around saying I can do more, but you haven't checked in with yourself, and also know you can't single-handedly save all of these people. You can't control who this child that has reported sexual abuse. You cannot control who she goes home with, right? You have to pass the baton to children's services, and if they deem this man okay and safe, then that's that. You have to know when to stop pushing yourself. um, I would say that my time at the Child Assessment Center, if you don't know what that is, anyone that is watching, think Law and Order SVU. It's where Marissa would take the kiddos, Olivia would take the kiddos to get a forensic interview. And I sat through some of those forensic interviews, and to listen to a 2-year-old talk about what happened to them, or a 3-year-old, or read those reports. And at times, right, I had to set a boundary, because I would have SVU detectives ask if I wanted to see a picture, not for funsies, but like they look at the pictures. And I'd be like, no, not
Right.
me. Not I don't have to. I
Hmm.
don't. The other social workers did that. I'm good. That would be too much for me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's an example of not overriding my nervous system to be a better social worker. I had to really ask myself, well, looking at this, I had a boss teach me this, a supervisor teach me this. Will looking at this make me a better social worker, or do I just feel like I need to because, right, I feel, all of these complex emotions related to what happened to this child, and supporting their family. So I think that's a good tangible example of not pushing through when you already have a really traumatic job. You don't have to, you don't got to add extra to it just because someone else did. And SVU cops, they had a high turnover. I had many of them say, "How are you still here?" And I said, "Child, suppression of emotions and numbness." And then I ended up leaving actually because I was like, "Oh, this isn't healthy. I
Wow.
should feel right."
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I want to talk about your transition to Mexico, if that's okay.
Yes.
And just what, I guess, what made you make the move, right? Take the leap to Mexico and the peace that you found outside of the U.S. Anything that you want to share?
I would say Mexico saved my life because it really did. A lot of Black women deal with depression and suicidal thoughts, and we got shit to do. So we don't always address it in the most healthy of ways, or we don't. We just push it down and suppress it. So anyone that has kind of been following knows that I used my page to advocate for my son, who was then 6, who was expelled, and there was just a lot around the school racism and bullying that he experienced, and the pushback that I got from speaking out against that, death threats, everything you can think of. And then when I laid that to rest, and I was like, you know what, fine, Columbus, Ohio is racist. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't advocate. Leave it alone. Right. Then I went to, I was around the time I had my daughter, and she's now 7, but I had postpartum preeclampsia, and it is, everyone can guess what Black women go through who give birth. I had postpartum. So after I had her, I developed preeclampsia, and I had a really horrific experience at Ohio State Medical Center. And I almost died because they did not believe, my doctor who called ahead to say that I had preeclampsia, and I was left in triage. So just your general medical racism there. Um, and I started a campaign, like a online campaign, pull up or shut up, do no harm, because that was around the time everyone was like, "We love Black people, so show it." So show it. So show it, right? Do no harm, listen to us, protect us. And there was just a lot around that. That was very stressful. The hospital's lawyers did not like that I took to social media. And so there was a lot of pushback there, more death threats, had a rock thrown through my window the day I had written a piece for Pop Sugar about what happens. It was just a lot. And I said, you know what? You know what? Dr. Shauna Murray did a decolonizing therapy, not class, it was like a series. And my then supervisor at the time had paid for me to do that. And we got to talking one day, and she mentioned Merida, Mexico. I think she saw it on like House Hunters or something, because I said, I need a place to go for just a month, right? This was the height, not the height, but like the end of 2020, I want to say. Um, so COVID restrictions were still in place. And I said, I want to go to Mexico, not to party, not to even go anywhere. I just want to rent an Airbnb, see my patients during the day, and just lay in a hammock at night, not going out, not seeing none. I just needed that. And I talked to my children's father, and he agreed to it. Um, and so I came for a month, and I saw how easy it was for US passport holders to get residency. And I said, that at that time, you didn't need to prove financial solvency. They have lifted that, unfortunately. I didn't have to make a certain amount. They were just like, come. Like, if you've come to Mexico before, you low key love it here, like you should stay. And it was really, really simple. I felt guilt there too, because I have a history of working with trafficking survivors and asylees and undocumented folks. And so just to see how easy it was for me, right? That privilege is not something that um, that I don't think about often. But that's what happened. I got it for myself and for my kids and for their dad, because I was like, you never know what's going to happen. And not that the United States wasn't a shit show 5 years ago, but now, right? Like, people are wanting to leave and they can't for various reasons. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you about transitioning into your business? Right. I talk a lot about digital entrepreneurship, which is a path that I took outside of a toxic job, utilizing my social work skill set now to as a healing practitioner, right, helping Black women heal from workplace trauma. That what was that process like for you in starting your own business, coaching business?
Mhm. Well, when I started, I was still seeing patients. So
Okay.
my group practice owner knew that I was leaving, going to be in Mexico, was a supporter, um, and I was just still so overwhelmed. I don't know if we as therapists have had the time or taken the time to process the impact of the pandemic, which is still going on. But the pandemic, right? Have we processed holding space for others? And I know that I had nurses and doctors on my patient caseload. So I felt a lot of guilt around being able to work from home and being able to work from Mexico, right? While they were in the hospitals watching people die and watching their coworkers die.
Yeah.
So I probably worked from Mexico seeing patients as a therapist for maybe 4 months. And then I tapped out. I said, Mexico is a place that forces you to slow down and
It
deal
does.
with what you have not been dealing with and suppressing. And so I made the transition out of therapy. Then I took a hiatus for like a year, I would say. I'm very grateful to people that subscribe. Like, you have no idea, you literally saved my life. I had raised money in a GoFundMe to move to Mexico, use some of that to pay rent. Obviously, rent is much less here than, in the United States. I was able to just kind of write and do content creation. Not even the content creation. I was so burnt out. Y'all got to look back at the post. I don't know what I wrote, but like, people were just so supportive because of me as a human, not because they expected like content every 2 days or whatever the algorithm is asking of us. So in that way, I was very fortunate to be able to take that hiatus. And the hiatus came to an end because real life. And I saw a need for, so in case you don't know, we can't see people who aren't from the state that we're licensed in. We don't have reciprocity right now as social workers. I know that they're trying to change that. It's been like 2 years that they've been working on it. So I thought about two things. I started doing event sessions, where it's just a one-time, one-to-one session with me, just like what it sounds like, events. And I had the therapist in me, right? I had a screening tool to make sure folks aren't coming to vent, but it's really like I was just, essayed yesterday, or I'm in a dangerous situation. It's not for that. It's not for crisis. It's just to vent and it's to a safe space. And then secondly, because we can't see, folks can't see people unless they're in the state. Or they lost, a lot of people were losing their therapists. Black people were losing their therapists because their therapists dropped them once they moved to Mexico. And a lot of people hadn't even like really moved to Mexico. They're just here indefinitely, or they're in another country indefinitely. If you're, it gets a little sticky. It gets a little sticky. A lot of folks gave up everything, so they don't have a home mailing address. Can't even finagle it that way in the U.S. And so people lost their therapists, all that to say. And so mental health coaching is not therapy. I say that not to just cover my ass, but it's true. Coaching is more future forward. Therapy is more let's process and requires a diagnosis. We don't do that in mental health coaching. And so I offered that as an alternative for Black folks and people of color for 8 to 12 weeks to work on skills with a lot of psychoeducation, a lot of skills building, and just a listening, validating ear for folks that are in the United States, throughout these past few years and dealing with a lot of trauma.
And if people wanted to book a session with you, would they just go to your website?
Right now, I'm not accepting new clients, but they can absolutely
Okay.
email me and I can let them know when I am. Um, Good news for Ohio folks, I am actually going to start back
Wow.
doing therapy. And I am trying to figure out a way to take insurance because that is a huge barrier. Of course, people, it can't always be private pay.
Mhm.
So I am on the cusp of figuring that out. So I will let people know through Instagram and Substack when I'm accepting therapy clients if you live in Ohio.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. Right. I think we tend to like under under recognize. I don't think that's a word, but like downplay our skill set as social workers, right? And just to realize that there are so many people who need our skills, especially during this time, in different
Mhm.
ways to utilize them, right? It doesn't have to be how we're taught within an institution. You can take your skill set and utilize that outside the institution that may be harming you. Hmm.
Absolutely. There have been many a times I wanted to burn my social work lessons, and I've actually gotten in trouble. I haven't had anything like against my social work license, but I have. The board knows who I am in Ohio because I am a troublemaker. But I have not. I've been doing social work. Like that's what speaking out is. It's in our code of ethics actually. Um, and I think it's a good thing when the powers that be know your name. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you if someone might be living in a pattern of self sacrifice, but not even realizing it. Maybe this conversation kind of opened their eyes, right? Am I engaging in behaviors that kind of lead to self sacrifice? Are there any signs, maybe in your own journey or what you've seen with your clients, that may be those red flags, right, along our journey that allow us to be like, oh, I need to set boundaries here to preserve myself because I'm engaging in behaviors that can lead to self sacrifice?
Defensiveness for sure. Um, Feeling resentful, right? Paying attention to how your body feels when someone asks you to do something, no matter what it is, whether it's at work, whether it is within your friend group, whether it's someone asking you for money outside of Trader Joe's. I don't know. Um, really seeing how your body is feeling in that moment. But I do think that resentfulness and defensiveness is a big one. Um, I think it kind of it can mirror burnout, symptoms of burnout. Um, I know that when I was close to the end of my job at the Child Assessment Center, I would, of course, we have to triage, right? Anyone in the field knows that. But I would find myself, sometimes sighing. I was an asshole, but only for a little bit. Like really sighing sometimes when a parent would call in and ask, like, can I get a forensic interview? Because it would be something like, my kid now, she takes her underwear off and then comes into bed with me. Does that mean she's being sexually abused? Right. And I would just be like, no, offer the psychoeducation, let them know it's nothing to worry about. Da, 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 da. I'll get off the phone. I'll just be like, do they know that like toddlers are being like, right? And then I had to be like, wait a minute, for that parents, for their reality, right? They are just as terrified. Like, I need to be able to witness and hold space. And I can't do that because I'm not even doing that for myself. And that takes a lot of self awareness and privilege. Yes, everybody cannot quit their jobs, but I am of the firm belief that some of us are in jobs and professions where we hold too much power not to be able to quit when we are sighing at clients, when we are saying, oh my God, like this is so simple.
Mhm.
Like, girl, get it together. And we do that in healthcare. I'm not going to spill all the secrets, but nurses and doctors, because of what we see, right? There's a difference between that Black humor to cope and actually being annoyed at your patients
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
because your nervous system is overwhelmed. Right. And so being able to recognize that, I would say that's the biggest skill that you need to have, whether it is in social work, whether it is in activism, whether it is at your job, is that self awareness to know when you need to take a step back because we have too much power. We wield too much power to be staying in these positions burnt out and harming folks. And assuming the worst of folks, because when you're burnt out, when you're assuming the worst of people all the time. I remember what it was like. This parent is doing this on purpose. This client is doing this on purpose. This client is manipulative. Da, 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 da. Like, can we regulate first? And the systems aren't built for us to do that, right? Nurses, doctors working 60, 70 hours. That's a whole other tangent, right? So if we're working in a system like that, we need to have our own systems, our own internal systems, to say, no, this is not how I want to show up for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how do we begin to, I guess, build those internal systems? As you mentioned, like the systems are not set up for it. We are trained to go against our bodies in graduate school or like education period, right?
Yeah.
As we're being trained for these fields, how do we even begin, I guess, to connect to our bodies, to recognize the signals that they're giving us, and then to build those, as you said, internal systems to regulate and care for ourselves? Anything that you want to share?
Let's say move to Mexico. That's not realistic. Move to Mexico. And I don't mean that like it saved my life, but obviously that's not a tool for everyone. But I say that jokingly, but also like removing yourself from the stimulus, right? Removing yourself from the situation so you have time to breathe. I removed myself from Mexico. Is not perfect. Absolutely not. It is, there's anti-Blackness globally. Right? There's classism globally. There's all types of shit globally. But removing yourself from certain systems, however that might look like for you, so that you can give yourself a pause, is the answer. And that doesn't always mean quit your job. Like when I was in my 20s, that was not an option because if I quit my job, I wouldn't eat. So obviously that's not the same thing we would tell clients, like, right, what are, maybe explore, what are you telling your clients, right? If you can have compassion for the client that works 3 jobs, 7 days a week, right? And what skills are you teaching that client? What are you bringing up to that client? What are you validating for that client? Because that's you, right? You're not gonna tell a client to quit their job. Like, obviously they can't. So remembering, not treating yourself as a client, but just remembering that you deserve that same care, compassion, and thoughtfulness around what can this actually really look like for me in an impossible situation. Because then we're kind of back to, I keep talking about the Huntington Institute, but I love it so much. You need to just go read all their blogs and shit, because it's such a good reminder that, yeah, people can't leave a war-torn area. People can't leave when there's soldiers everywhere. People can't leave parts of Gaza. Yet, how are they connecting to joy? How are they connecting to self? How are they connecting in community despite? So if, this is the only time I'm gonna push for comparison, but if they can do it, right? If our clients can do it, right, we can do it too. Otherwise, we shouldn't be telling them what to do, right, when we work with them.
That's very true. I wanted to ask you, as we're winding down, the difference between healthy generosity and harmful self-sacrifice for those who may be new to establishing these boundaries, and still feel like what sensitive people feel, like this need to care, right, and to voice our concern about what we're seeing, but it not going to the place where it's harming us. Anything that you want to share around that?
Just, can I come back from my yes? Right? Can I come back from this yes? What is this yes going to cost me? And sometimes, unfortunately, we don't know that except through hindsight. So a lot of times we don't really come to these conclusions till after we have overfunctioned for months or years. I see it as something that ebbs and flows and goes up and down. But that's just a really simple question that we can ask ourselves is, what is this yes, right? What will this yes cost me? Whether it's time, money, energy, something physical, and sit with that. I think that we know, maybe we don't. I think that it's in the process. because a lot of times we don't know when we're burnt out until we're already burnt out, because it's normalized in these systems, and it's normalized. You've normalized it to yourself. Otherwise, how do you keep pushing, right? You suppress and you
Mm-hmm.
numb, and you keep going.
Yeah.
You suppress and you numb, and you keep going. So giving yourself every opportunity to let things come up, whether that looks like meditation, whether that looks like not even a guided meditation, but just sitting on your yoga mat, floor time. I'm big on for neurodivergence. Just lay down on the floor. We don't do that often enough. Just lay down on the floor. You don't need a mat. Just get down on the floor, um, and see what comes up. I'm a fan of rage journaling. I mean regular journaling too. I
Mm-hmm.
like to be like, so and so had me effed up. Like just let it all out on the page as well. Um, yeah, and just see what works for you. But the biggest piece of it, and I think we know this as therapists, and we say it all the time, is we're not trying to avoid the feeling. The only way out is through. You have to sit with that guilt, sit with that shame, let it feel uncomfortable, and then do an action that you wouldn't normally do anyways. That's the
Powerful.
practice. It is building a muscle.
It is building the muscle, absolutely. But yes, as we're winding down, first of all, I want to thank you so much for coming onto my channel, and sharing everything that you've shared. Please, y'all, get Megan's new book, Survival Pending Revolution. I have it up here. And as I was telling her, like, I needed this. I wish that I had this in grad school when I was going through the phases of feeling like I could save certain institutions, solve these huge problems by myself, right? And really like shifting now in my 30s towards self preservation. So please, the link is in the description if you'd like to purchase that as well. I want to ask how people can connect with you, follow your journey online, and then any offers or other information you'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I have to do more of these. I don't like talking about myself. So I do more of it. I do more of it. I say yes more. And it was an honor to be specifically, here with you today. So I'm going to send you my Substack link. I forgot to in typical ADHD fashion, but
I have it
Instagram,
here.
of course. Oh, you have it. Okay. Did I send
Mm-hmm.
it? I did. Okay.
No, I got it.
Okay, so Substack, I'm in the process of, I don't know if I'll leave Instagram. It's annoying. The algorithm, God only knows what's happening there. I use Instagram mainly now to share more memes. That's where the algorithm pushed me. And then I do my mutual aids in my actual newsletter where I can like talk candidly without being shadow banned. And then also, to connect on the ground with someone I know, right, that is on the ground in Gaza. So that, because I know there's just so much information out there, and people are like, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? I like to do real vetting, like through community. And so I also, I share ways to support there on the ground in my newsletter. And then you can follow my Substack. Substack has new writings and essays. I want to say every month, but child, ADHD. When I feel inspired, but I'm going to get better with that. But you can find me on Substack. And then you can also, of course, follow Instagram if you are not there already. And then you can always email me as well if you are looking for a therapist. If you're in Ohio, I can keep you updated on what insurance I'll be able to take, or out of pocket if you got it like that. And then email, Substack, Instagram. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, so please check out Megan's link in the description section. If you're watching the replay, I'm going to read a few comments. Black Women Build Wealth. Samira, hello. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And just Jenny says, love listening to Megan speak.
Hi, Jenny.
Yes. Wonderful. So I want to thank y'all so much for joining us. If you're here live, if you're watching the replay, thank you. Please comment if anything resonated. Please follow Megan on Substack and Instagram as well. And I'll have all her links in the description section. And yes, her new book is out, Survival Pending Revolution. So please go get that as well.
Yes, and it's
Um,
$4.99, friends. That's what I had to, $4.99. I get like $3.99 of it, right? So I tried to make it as accessible as possible. Um, and I really want to know what people think of it. It's like 30 pages too. It's an ebook. Like y'all can get through it. Um, if it was as nuanced as I wanted it to be, I think it would be a full book, but I wanted to get it out, um, and help people kind of
mhm.
sit with all this complex, it's nuanced.
Yes, yes. And it's needed at this time, right? Because I think one of the things social media does is remove nuance from our thought processes. So I know a lot of us have been like returning to reading. We need more
Books,
books,
like
right?
yeah, like yes. I was gonna show my bookshelf. Like y'all think I don't read? Like I need y'all to know that I am what I talk about. Like a house tour. Like
Yes.
it's a bookshelf with physical books. I don't just be making stuff up.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, well, thank you again, Megan, for joining me. And thank you all for joining as well and sharing everything that you have in the chat. And yeah, until next time, y'all, this has been beautiful. Thank y'all. Bye.